at 4 o'clock Eastern here, and you know, if other people log in, they'll catch up, but I want to be respectful of your time as well for all of those who are on here. So today we are going through the training of my HR in a box, and what we're doing today, as opposed to a PowerPoint, we are working solely off the Underground Playbook website. Now, some of you have access to it, some of you don't. If you don't have access to it, hang on to the end and I'll show you how to. But we're going to go through just about every step of what I have in this HR in a box, and just some hopefully cool ideas. Whether you have 1 staff member or 10 right now, all this stuff can be very applicable. So the first thing I want to do is recognize that, you know, in the chat area, I want everybody to be communicative. I've opened the chat up again, and there's been a lot of you that have been on all the trainings this week, so I super appreciate that. Hopefully you got some good stuff out of it. From the response I've gotten, it seems that you have. So the one thing I'll do, I'll give you a minute. If you have the playbook, feel free to open it on a second screen. You can follow along. If not, it's okay. You'll still be able to see everything here. So let me log into everything and we'll get started. All right, so if you have the playbook, it should look like, give me on the screen, this, right? So under all the tabs, there's sub-tabs. So under the templates to grow your agency, that's where we're going to find this. All right, we're going to click on HR in the box. So we're not necessarily going to go in order here because there's some things I want to bring up first. All right, so the first thing, the phrase I want you to keep in mind, if you've ever read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, I think he describes it perfectly. It's one of my favorites. And basically, your agency or business, in his case, it's kind of like a bus. And so it doesn't always matter where the bus is going, but if you have the right people on the bus, you'll get to the right destination. If you don't have the right people on the bus, it really doesn't matter where the destination is. So that's the first thing I want to talk about, is getting the right people on the bus. All right, so we're going to go down here. We're going to open up. So first of all, I'm not going to go through, you know, every single item in each download, but we are going to at least open up most of them. All right, so first, obviously, we want to start out with interview questions. And, you know, the biggest thing is with interview questions, obviously, you can Google online and get a bunch of good basic interview questions. And I'm not saying that they aren't appropriate or that they don't accurately depict somebody, but if you're looking for a specific person, let's say a sales producer for some reason, or, you know, something of that nature, office manager, you really want to tailor it, right? So if I open up here, give me just a second. I have in here each different position that you could hire for in your agency and specific questions to ask. And here's why this is important, because you can't just have a blanket interview for every single position, right? Because not all their tasks are going to be the same. So, you know, when I look at something, the most popular here is sales producer, because that seems to be the one where A, we want the best we can possibly get, and B, definitely the one with the highest turnover. Right? And so that's what we have to really look at here, is what questions are we going to be able to ask somebody that make sure they're the perfect fit for our agency, right? And that we will feel comfortable hiring them for that exact position. And like I said, I'm not going to read through everything but every single answer and sub question, but I want to hit a few of these, right? So obviously, let's look at question 1. What this question is asking, and you can read it. What you're trying to gauge to them is where their priorities are when it comes to a sales position, right? So is it more, you know, they want a heavy quantity, they want heavy quality? Do they believe that selling is just selling the product, selling is selling themselves? We know the right answers to these, and as opposed to just coming out and saying it, these questions are really honing in on, you know, exactly what they feel is important in selling the product and influencing people. And so if you notice each question, and you'll see this is repetitive throughout all positions, we're really asking for specific examples, right? Because what I want to know is the exact times if they say they've had experience doing something, or they think they could do something because they did it before. I want to know when. I want to know exact. Now, are they going to always have on the spot the most eloquent of stories? Absolutely not. But We want to just get inside their head and get exact examples. All right, so this first one, an important part of this job involves selling and influencing. Tell me a time when you were the most successful at influencing someone to take action on a suggestion that you made. And so we're doing a couple things here. When we add in the words like most or ever or things of that nature, we are getting, hopefully, the best that they have to bring to the table as far as examples go. All right, and like I said, I'm not going to read all the sub questions, but this just kind of takes you through getting inside their head, because that's what a lot of the interviewing techniques are. It has to be more psychology than just basic questions. All right, now question number 2, and you don't have to word all your questions the same way. What I'm just trying to show you is the different parts that make up a good sales producer and how we're interviewing for them. So the next one is about overcoming objections, right? So occasionally make a recommendation, it's met with resistance, tell me a time, blah, 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 when that happened. What we're also now trying to do is how comfortable they are with rejection, overcoming options, or obstacles, excuse me, I'm getting tongue-tied. Spent a lot of webinars this week. So that's what we're doing in question 2. One of the hugest things about being a sales producer is overcoming objections, right? And so we're trying to get a specific instance of when they've overcome objections. And if you look, each sub question here, and this goes for all of them, but you're really getting specific. When did it take place? What was the suggestion? Who, what, how, all that good stuff. And how did you overcome it if you did? Now, sometimes, a couple of the best sales producers I ever hired, if they give me this example of whatever it may be that they overcame an objection, right? And I say, how did you fix it? Sometimes the answer is they didn't, which I'm okay with. I like honesty, right? That's a big part of this. And so that's why the questions are tailored in a certain way, but it doesn't mean they need to ace every single one. All right, like I said, I'm not going to go through every single question, but then we jump over. So up here is more the influence in selling. This is more the interpersonal skills. So this is going to be more in effect to how they work well with other people, team versus single mentality, which with a sales producer, you really could have either. With a sales producer, if they weren't always team, that's okay, as long as they met all the other qualities. So, what we're doing here is putting them on the spot. Tell me a time you couldn't get along with somebody. How was, what was the conflict? How did it get overcome? All right. And so that's really the interpersonal skills. It is important if they hopefully give you honest answers. All right. And so that's why we're just trying to dig in here a little bit when it comes to a sales producer. Right. And this is more of the interpersonal stuff. So building relationships, get the good working relationship, ethics, office values. I want to know all this stuff, right? We got to get deep into this. So as you can already see, starting off with these few basic questions, as opposed to the general interview guide that you always might have in front of you, you're going to find out a lot more and get a better feeling about somebody. Okay. So next is oral communication. And, once again, the basic interview questions are going to be, well, are you comfortable talking to people? Well, everybody's going to say yes, right? And you can kind of tell through the interview. But once again, we want to actually understand how good they are at it, right? Especially in this case, like look at question number 2 here. We're frequently required to explain things to customers. Give me an example of when you particularly effective were explaining something complex or a concept over the phone. Once again, we're asking for specific examples, all right? And so that's a lot of the oral communication, and always go with your gut too. When you're talking to somebody at an interview, you'll know pretty quickly if they can communicate orally. You'll know that pretty quickly. But this is going to give us specific examples about why and how somebody does that. All right. So now let's go. This one kind of is a kicker a little bit. All right. So everybody on here has experience in sales. I hope so, or you probably wouldn't be an agent. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1's the worst, 10's the best. How good are you at planning and organizing? I'm going to give you a few seconds here to answer. I'll put my answer out here. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1's the worst, 10's the best. How would you rate yourself for your skills in planning and organizing? We'll wait for everybody because there's a little bit of a delay, so I want to make sure. I'm going to throw my answer in here. Right? So if you look now, obviously there's some of you that are very good at it, and there's others that would rate ourselves poor at it. I am not great at this. All I'm trying to show you here is not every single one of these subject areas of the questioning in the interview is a make or break, right? You know, I know a lot of successful salespeople that would probably rate themselves a 4 or worse. And that's kind of the beast, right? Now, if I'm hiring, and we'll see here in a minute, if I'm hiring for a management position, well, then no offense, but I'm going to pick Beverly, Linda, and Teresa over myself or Sal or Karen and something of that nature, you know? So it's just a matter of, and I hope you guys didn't take offense to that because I threw myself in there too. But the reality is, depending on the position you're hiring for, some of these questions are going to weigh more heavily and some less. All right. I'm not saying planning and organizing is not important. That's not what I'm saying. It's just sometimes the certain skill sets people just don't have. Right. And actually, believe it or not, a lot of good salespeople are horrible at organization. Absolutely horrible. If you looked at my office and my desk right now, you'd think I'm in a dorm room, is how bad it is, right? I know where everything is, but to the naked eye, it looks horrible. You know, so I just want to show you that we want to still ask these questions when we're looking to hire a sales producer, but depending on the position we're hiring for, it could be heavily weighed more or less, depending on what it is. I hope that makes sense. All right, so I just wanted to bring that up and kind of just show a little case study about how we're all over the board, and we're all, you know, good salespeople on here, but we're all over the board when it comes to this specific key area. I wish I was better. All right, so let's now talk about if we're hiring a customer service rep. You're going to see a lot of the same, except for now, as opposed to the first subject line or the first section being the influencing selling, we're talking about service, okay? And once again, we're asking for specific examples. You know, and so I don't want to go into those basic questions of name your 3 best qualities, name your 3 worst, you know, and because it's just, you don't get a lot from that. We want examples. Every question you have for a potential employee needs to have specifics behind it, and they need to give you examples of it. Okay. So in this one, it's just, you know, give me an example of the best customer service you gave somebody. How did it happen? Describe it. You know, how important it is. Tell me when you were really helpful to a customer. Now, if you notice, 1 and 2 are very similar, but we're still going to ask both of them because I want to see if there's similarities between the 2 examples. All right. And then, of course, number 3, let me know how you deal with angry people. We all know we deal with upset people all the time, right? And we got to know how they deal with that, because the last thing you want to do is hire somebody. They come into the office and within a week, a customer yells at them and they snap back. I made that mistake before. You know, so we want to put them on the spot. I don't want to always, you know, make people uncomfortable, but you almost got to make them squirm a bit and just be honest with you. Okay. And then we talk a little bit about retention. All right. And that's also obviously important. Now, notice something here. What comes back, even though it's customer service, influencing selling? Because the reality is, I don't care. And this should be the rule for your agency and staff, whatever their position is. They could be a customer service rep, sales producer, office manager, the agent themselves. We all sell in some way or another, right? Whether it's actually selling a policy or getting referrals and leads. So I'm still going to go back, and maybe I won't go as specific as before, but I'm still going to ask them questions about influencing and selling. You know, and I'm going to make it known to them. I'm going to make it known that everybody in this office is responsible for selling in some fashion. And you might have that set up in your office different ways. You know, I didn't really ever have my customer service reps, even though licensed, didn't really write policies, but they're still getting leads, referrals, cross-sell calls, all that good stuff. So, you know, that is going to depend on your setup and your agency, but we still want to ask about their selling ability, even if they're a customer service rep, right? No matter the position, or an admin, doesn't matter if they're licensed or not. Everybody has a responsibility to sell, because if us as the agents don't make our numbers, nobody has a job. Right? So we got to make sure that they understand that up front during the interview process. And once again, I'm not going to go through this because it's pretty similar, but we want to talk about those interpersonal skills. All right. It's pretty much, I don't know offhand, I think it's pretty much the same question. It's just worded a little bit different as a sales guy. All right, and then it's also, sorry if I'm making you sick here. Oral communication, same thing. And you're going to find both of those, the interpersonal, the oral communication is going to be the same for really any position you're going to or interview for. All right, I'm not going to go over this today. You know, it's in here in the playbook, but it's something whereas a lot of us, I know either we take care of the financials ourselves or we have somebody from corporate help us. You know, but if for some reason you're in the position to hire for someone that's specifically for financial services, you can absolutely use these. A lot of similar questions. But real quick, what I will say is if you are interviewing for something or even a life specialist, these examples, you want to be super specific about that particular category. All right. Same with the planning and organizing, interpersonal skills. I'm going to skip back because there's one more I want to show you on here. All right, so office manager, or I also have a separate one for agency manager because sometimes it's different. But here's the big one. So you're going to see a lot of different or a lot of the same questions, but this is big. And I want to urge you something. If you're ever going to hire a office manager or an agency manager, the number one thing for your sake to make sure you have is somebody that's a good problem solver. All right, that's the biggest thing. Because the last thing I want is to hire a manager that can't solve problems, not just their own, but everybody else. Because what's the point of a manager? It's to manage the office. And the other point for you guys you got to understand is when you manage an office, all right, they are kind of your gatekeeper for people to bug you. So you want to make sure that they're not getting too much stuff passed on to you that they could deal with themselves. So whenever I interviewed for a manager of any kind, office or agency, I would hammer these questions because you not are just needing a manager, you need a gatekeeper. And that's what a lot of these questions are going to do. All right. And so it just kind of puts more examples. You know, oftentimes we need to remedy problems quickly. Describe when you did this. Diagnose and solve problems. All right. Solution to a problem, but it doesn't work. Tell me about when that's happened. All right. These, even though it's only 3 questions, when hiring a manager, this is huge. All right. Absolutely huge because I want a problem solver. You know, in fact, their title should be manager / problem solver, to be honest with you, because that's what I want. Okay. And then once again, the influence in selling, interpersonal, oral, and I want to make sure we're not missing admin. I'm not going to really go over because it's very similar to customer service rep, except they're probably not going to be licensed if you're hiring an admin only. All right. And it's just basically want to know if they follow instructions is the big difference on that one. Keep going. Telemarketer. All right. Kind of very similar to admin. You're kind of doing a /admin / salesperson here. All right. We just want to make sure they can follow instructions, head to the grindstone and dial. All right. So those are the main positions, all right, in most agencies. So I just wanted to kind of start with that today because that goes back to getting the right people on the bus. Googling interview questions is not going to get you the right people on the bus. This is, because this is specific for insurance. All right. So let's go back to our HR in the box. Oh, yeah, it makes me redo it every time. That's okay. All right. So we got the staff, right? And, you know, hopefully they're good. So let me ask you guys another question. How do you guys right now retain staff? How do you retain staff right now? How do you make sure the good ones don't go? What kind of things do you do? Give you guys just a second to answer that. That is very true. Yes, you do have to find a good one first. But let's say you have a good one. What do you do? Yep, Teresa, that's always obviously a great idea. Yep. Benefits, health insurance, 401k, all that good stuff. What else could you do? outside of monetary. Yes, that's one thing I always did, Teresa. Absolutely. Yep. Ah, Beverly got a good one. I'm going to bring it up in a second. Yep, monetarily with extra commission incentives, bonuses, annual bonuses, absolutely. Yes, Linda, that's a big one. All right, so I wasn't gonna, one thing I always did, and the only reason I do it is because I learned it from the agent I worked with. Every single day when the staff says bye, I always say, hey, thank you. Every day. I never did it. I never missed it once because the guy I worked for, an Allstate agent, did that for me every day. And it's just simple. Hey, I used to say, Tim, I'm going for the day. All right, great, Joe. Thank you. And that little thing, Linda, you're right. That little tiny thing makes a huge difference because I did feel appreciated. Even if I had a bad day, I would still get a thank you, and vice versa. When with my staff, if they had a bad day, I'd still give them a thank you. So that's a big one. I was going to go over that, but Linda, that made me think of it, and you're absolutely right. Thank your staff every day. Yep. All right, so a lot of these are great, and all of them work. But the one thing I want to hone back on, what Beverly said. So Beverly put education, good work environment, communication, and performance reviews, all great stuff. So I want to focus on the performance review. However, I never called it that. Just a second here. Almost call it not a review. I wouldn't even name it that. I would name it something like your post interview or something catchy like that. And what I'm doing here, guys, is I'm getting a feel for where their head's at, right? Where their head's at. So I want to know, how do you want your position to grow in the next 12 months? Remember, notice I didn't say them, their position, right? So, because if you say, where do you want to be in the next 12 months? Well, a lot of the times I want to be at this level or that level. No, how does your position grow in the next 12 months? And I try to get an honest feed. And that's the first thing I do whenever I do one of these staff interviews that they're already with me. What I do is I say, first and foremost, I need you to be honest with me because I'll be honest with you. And if there's something negative, just say it. We got to be transparent. All right. So I'd ask about their responsibilities. I'd ask them, what more do you think you could take on? And what do you think you'd want to get rid of? And what else do you think you could get better at? Right? I want to know about their compensation goals. Okay. I want to know, how much do you want to be making by the year end? Right? And you'll get answers all over the board. And you'll see exactly, and it's not even linked to motivation necessarily, just everybody's different. All right. And then look at this next question. How long would you like to see yourself in your current position? Or what position do you believe you're best suited for? And this question saved my butt one time with a staff member. I had a girl, her name was Erin. She was fabulous as far as talking to people. The clients absolutely loved her. Very smart, good problem solver. I hired her as a sales producer. All right. She wasn't the best at sales, but people loved her. And so when I talked to her about what do you think you would be best suited for, she said to me, she goes, I'd be way better in customer service. I made the change, and let me tell you, it was one of the best things I ever did for my agency, because now it opened up a spot for a sales producer, which I ended up getting in, which ended up being the best sales producer I ever had. Erin was there. She was an amazing customer service rep. Everybody just came to her, and it just worked out great. So that's the one question that saved my butt in the past and could definitely help you out. And so, like I hope most of you have monthly goals. So what I want them to answer is, what do you think the easiest monthly goal for you to achieve is? So we had goals for referrals, bundling, cross-selling, all right, actual policies written, and agency retention. I'm feeling like I'm missing one. Those were at least 4. I think there was a 5th one. I don't remember what it was. But everybody had a set of goals, all right, not just 1 or 2, but 4 or 5. And so what I would ask them is, what of these goals, which of these goals do you feel you can achieve the easiest? Because that's A, going to let me know where they think their strengths are. And B, now I'm going to watch. right? I'm going to see if they were correct. All right. So then obviously we go to the opposite. What do you think is the hardest goal for you to achieve? In that now, because we've already started with the positive, right? What's the easiest? So now I'm going to go, what's your hardest monthly goal to achieve? And so hopefully they're going to tell me that, and we're going to learn how to achieve it, right? What can I do to help? If you feel you're going to struggle at this, let's nip it in the bud now, as opposed to wait till the end of the month and see it and hit it. Okay. And this is another thing I ask people to be honest about. To see different from management or ownership as it relates to you. All right. And believe it or not, if you set the tone in your agency that, you know what, it's open door, you can be honest, I'm not going to blow up at you, I'll be honest with you if you're honest with me, you'll actually get some really good input, because a lot of the times as agents, we're doing so much in a day that we don't stop and think about the little things that might be making a huge, huge difference. All right. I had a staff member who I didn't really know it, but was coming in. It was only 2-3 minutes late, but it was every day. And it drove everybody else nuts. And I didn't really notice it until it was brought up to me in one of these. And I noticed it and we corrected it. Luckily, he changed. He was good to go. No problems after that. But, you know, if you set the precedent of being honest, then you will find out some real awesome information. Now, the other thing I want you to know is, and this might not be possible for you, I don't know. I did this. I took them out for coffee or lunch. I didn't do it in the back office because I didn't want them there with all the other staff members. I wanted them to be honest. And so we went somewhere where no one else was. Couldn't be interrupted, right? So it was either lunch or I went to, took them to Starbucks or something like that. Okay. All right. So before I move on to the next thing, do you guys have any questions as it pertains to any of the interview stuff or the staff review stuff? And we can move on after that. We're going to move on next to compensation. But I want to make sure we're good on this stuff before we move. Give you guys just a minute here. All right. Well, I'll close this out. If you have questions, just type them in, or like I said, if you're on a delay for some reason, I'll get it. We'll go back and answer it. So let me get out of this one. Okay. All right. Let's look at compensation. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the customer service and management stuff. What I want to spend time on, and you might have seen an email with a video out which really explained it, is the different type of comp guides for sales producers. All right. So we got a couple things here. So a lot of people are on what I call the base scale. All right. And so attached not just with the comp, but it's the responsibilities. And based on your area, guys, honestly, the pay per hour is going to be different for everybody. You know, if you're in an area that, if you're down in New York City or Long Island where people are averaging 30, 40 grand a year as opposed to where I am where it's 20, then your base pay is going to be different. So, you know, with the numbers, I don't want you to go necessarily right off of what I have, but the theory behind it is something we all can apply. So what I did, and I actually got off this scale. It didn't take me too long to realize there's better ways to do it, which I'll show you. But if you're convinced that you need to have a base scale, you know, I'd always do around 10 bucks an hour, flat 5%, and they get charged back for any cancellations before the first renewal. And then I'd give them a monthly bonus based on the premium written, as you can see there. All right, so they could earn all the way up to 500 bucks depending on the monthly bonus. And then the year-end bonus, I'd have certain levels, and that can be determined by you or that can be determined by your company, all right, if you're captive. But I'd give them a bonus on that. And that was my base scale. Should be pretty familiar with most of you. I'm sure this is something that you probably have already similarly in place. But then what I would do is actually show a scenario, a realistic scenario, all right, about what they could do. And then I'd always have this little caveat here, and this is for anybody. Once you wrote 400 items for my office, I make you a sales manager, and then you can earn an additional 2% on the other people we hire. All right, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. You guys are familiar. This is super easy to read and probably very similar to what you already have going. But I just wanted to show you that this is the base pay. Now let's get into the one I always get the most questions on, the draw. And actually I have a really nice video I'm going to add to the site here probably today that kind of explains it better. All right, so if you look at the draw, you know, we're at $1,500 a month, and it's all based off written premium. So depending on, now a draw, for those of you who don't know, it's almost like you're loaning them money. So I pay somebody $375 a week, all right? And so that $375, every sale they made, let's say they made 75 bucks off a sale, that would come and go towards the $375 I already gave them. So they're building up, they're making up the difference. It's almost like a loan, okay? And then obviously, if they go over the $1,500 a month, they're making more money at that point. So it's almost like for us at the end of the day, it's 100% commission, but we're paying that, which is ideal. But in the sales producer's mind, it's not really the case, all right? But I also want you to think about something. This was based off me. I made 10% commission on all sales. All right. And so I would pay them that up to 20 grand in written premium for the month. All right. If they had higher 12% and even the over 26,000, 15%. And now, of course, you're thinking, well, why would I pay them more than I'm making? But the reality is we can afford to do that because we're on a draw. So there's no base pay going out. Right. So basically, if they hit 26,000, I'm paying them 15% commission, but that's all I'm paying them. Okay, so in reality, if let's do that math. Okay, so let's say they hit 26,000 times the 0.15, so they're making 3,900 in a month. Now we've already fronted them 1,500, so you take the 3,900 they made, take 1,500 off of it, and now I'm going to pay them an additional $2,400. All right, and so when you really break that down, they're making around 24 bucks an hour. Which I know sounds high, but they're earning it too, right? Because we're not paying them on renewals. No, we're paying them on new business only. So that is now going to be your money in the next renewal cycle. All right. Now, once again, depending on your commissions in your area, your percentages could change. The dollar amounts could change. I'm just showing the theory behind it. Okay. If my average premium for my book was 15 grand a month, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to lose money. Right? And I'm not going to make it up for over a year. But that, you know, that wasn't my case. My case, we were over 30, 35 a month. So it really depends on your book of business and what your normal renewal commissions are. And that's going to really dictate a lot of these percentages here. All right. But I had very strict goals, and they weren't hard. They were not hard goals. But at least 15 items a month, 3 financial appointments, and we had something called easy features. And I want enrollments in that as well. Okay. And then if we go down to the bonus, it was a little complicated. And in my case, ACES score, that's just customer service score. If you're with Allstate, you're familiar with that. If you don't get paid extra on your service satisfaction scores, don't worry about this part. Okay. But I had a few other monthly things. So I had, if the agency hit its monthly goal, the whole office, you get an extra buck an item, you know. And let me tell you, if I had 3 sales producers, their minimum was 15. Our goal was not 45 a month. Our goal was 100. All right. So just because you're putting a minimum of 15 out there doesn't mean that's your agency goal. That means if they don't hit that, they're fired. So that's why it's so minimum. All right. And then I had stuff for the yearly bonus. And depending on where we were, like I said, this was Allstate world. So that's kind of what I did. And I did for their bonus, not a flat dollar amount when I was on the draw. We would do a percent of their salary they made for the year. So see, the more money they make, the more they can make in a bonus, but the more they're writing for me too. And why do I put compensation structure subject to change each year? Because if you're a captive agent, it very well could happen that they change something on you. And so basically they need to get paid how you get paid. Because you don't want to write checks you can't cash, right? So that's a theory on the draw, and that's something I always preferred, all right? And I have a great video that I'll put out there, so if you have the playbook, you'll be able to access that, okay? So that's the main thing I wanted to go through on compensation, All right, now there's always a lot of questions on the draw. What questions do you guys have on it before I move on? This is the way I would pay my staff every single time. I did the base to start, but then I was introduced to this and I never went back. And people made more money too. I made more money, they made more money, numbers were better, it just made sense. See if anybody has any questions. If not, we can move on. We got just another second here because I know you're typing if you are. If you, yeah, Teresa, good question. If you have the right staff member and you do the interviewing right, it wasn't an option when I was hiring. Now, here's the reality though, okay? So if you have staff now on a base, it might be tough to convince them to switch, right? I'm talking new hires. I didn't give them an option. You know, did I have to go through maybe 1 or 2 extra interviews? Yeah, you know, but that's okay because I want someone that's going to sell for me to work, you know? So all mine were, yep. And here's my recommendation is do some math out for them. If you have somebody that's on a base salary right now, okay, what I would do is talk to them about switching to this and give them the option and show them they can make more money this way, right? Sal, yeah, not on this screen, but you can print it out because you are part of the package, the universe. You can print it out right under there, all this stuff. Absolutely. Yep. Okay. All right. Now, if we go here, I have one for weekly draw. That's not as attractive as some, you know, I like it for like my business. I don't know. I didn't really try it in my agency, but I've heard people have successful with it. And the only difference you're doing in the weekly draw, as opposed to giving them a goal monthly for premium, you're giving them a goal weekly and it resets. I'm assuming you're talking about the financial services. Let me bring it back up here, Zleka. So where he's talking about, I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong, is 50% commission on all financial products sold. Right? Now, here's another thing though. I want to bring this up. Check with your state. It might be illegal in some states. All right, depending on how you structure it. You could just mark it as a bonus. So I didn't put a cap on it, but like for example, if I wrote a life policy that they referred over to me, and let's say my commission was $680, all right, I would go ahead and pay them half of that. Yep. Oh, I see what you're saying. So that's not what you're talking about. No, I wouldn't do that. But here's the one thing that's a good point though. So what he's actually saying is if they don't hit that 20, what do you do for commission? You could put 50%. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I didn't do it. I luckily didn't have that issue. I don't think that's a bad idea though. If they don't hit at least the 20, or you might have to make it 15 or whatever. You know what I mean? So yeah, I see what you're saying now. But yeah, so what he's asking is if they don't hit this up to 20, are they going to get half the commission? You know, which in this case, you'd actually have to change that probably down to 15 so that the second line makes sense. It's not a bad idea. That's a good way to incent people. Absolutely. Absolutely.